Hey, I'm really excited about our first retouching session together. This particular image that we're starting out with was supposed to be simpler than it really turned out to be. It was really just going into a space, craft a photograph that went from one room to another. Now we didn't find the right places was tight. You saw me going through that whole process, first talking about the intention, and then at the shoot you heard and saw everything that I did. What you didn't really see was how my stomach at times really was turning, because I didn't feel quite that this was right in the space being so tight. So at one point in the conversation, I suddenly say, oh, my stomach is hurting. And that was not stomach ache from food. That was stomach ache from being a bit nervous about how all this is going to come together. And now that I've been through this picture and know that it will turn out okay, I'm really quite relieved, because I was super excited when we shot this picture on location that day. The challenges are not only the space being tight, but also telling the story in a way that makes sense compositionally. I not only did this tutorial for you to learn from, but I also did it for a magazine called Genlux, and they are working with some fairly tight restrictions when it comes to their magazine layout and where the gutter sits and all that stuff. So I had to kind of tweak things a lot more than I thought. Now for our retouch, maybe I'll choose to extend the picture to a different format, and it will be a little bit easier to put this image together. But we're going to go through this whole process, and it's kind of exciting, because if this was really easy, you wouldn't learn as much, I think, as if doing something that's a little bit harder, and you have the files, I have the files, and we sort of go through this process together. And I think there's a larger sense of learning in that process. So on the screen in front of you, you see the pictures that we're going to work with. The bottom two is the landscape, and since it was so tight, I couldn't shoot that room in one frame. This is 24mm, and I shoot a left and a right. And you see there's some obvious distortions there. So when we stitch that together, we're gonna work on those distortions so it seems like a flatter room. Then we're gonna use the top left frame, which will be our hero lady. And this frame I've been attracted to the whole time. I marked it on set through my selection process. It just became the one that I was really gravitating towards. And then on the top right, you see our gentleman. You heard me talking about me not liking that back wall. I chose the space for the textures, and the wall that you see in the bottom room, I think is beautiful. The top room behind our guy is too busy. So we're actually going to work on changing that wall as well, and then soften that so the attention go more to the guy rather than to the girl. As I mentioned in the introduction we just did, it's all about guiding the eye to where you want the focus to go within the photograph. Photoshop, in the case of this image, is really used more as a problem solver. This picture we could not create in this location if it hadn't been for the amazing tool that Photoshop is. So this will be more of a massaging, putting a picture together where we could not necessarily do one without Photoshop. And I think Photoshop is extraordinary in that sense, that it helps solve problems to create beautiful visuals. We're going to run this down in a few separate chapters. The next one, we're going to go into Capture One and quickly run you through the color palette that you see on the screen, which was set in Capture One. I talked about this briefly. You know, we have been through this in the color prerequisite. So take a look at that, and we'll work through the color and how we got to this blue-green tint that we're looking at. Then we're going to go into building the background, and then we're going to go into putting in our woman and making sure that fit. And the issues that we have with the head of her coming into the body of him, and we might end up cheating it a little bit, actually flopping the woman so that she leans with her head to the left and legs to the right. So we're going to explore that together as well. So I'll see you in a few seconds when we open up Capture One and go through all the images that we photographed that day.